Hi, this is Ashish R. Bidekar, and welcome to my podcast, the ARB Show. I'm really happy to introduce today's guest, Sudhir. I know Sudhir for quite some time now, and he's been associated with the startup ecosystem since 2009. In fact, he conceptualized and created India's first television show on startups and venture capital called Starting Up on ET Now. He's also worked in premier organizations like BookMyShow and Lenskart, amongst others. And he has recently become an entrepreneur with Startify, a GTM Accelerator to help Series A companies scale up in the Middle East region. Sudhir, welcome to the show. Please do share more about your life journey so far, about Startify, and about the startup scene in general.
Sure, Ashish, it's an absolute pleasure. And it is true, we go back maybe over almost 20 years, right? And you've been also a mentor, so I'm really grateful. My journey with startups really began in 2007 with this body called Proto.in, which was the first product startup event, really a takeoff of demo, right, from the US, started by Vijay Anand actually and the Knowledge Foundation. And I was a part of it because I was a freelance journalist back then, writing for the EP, was handling the media. But then I got really involved, and as Proto evolved, the last two editions, Ravi Shankar, who was another member of the Knowledge Foundation, and myself, we led it, and it was great to be backed by Sequoia as a sponsor in AWS, and just curating these 15 hot product companies and companies that were made in India, built for the world, right? In giving them a platform in front of VCs and investors and angels and corporates. Extremely empowering. You felt like you're doing something for the country. And companies that came out of it include Druva, include some early SaaS companies that became winners, right? It was backed by Zoho. So, you know, really, I wouldn't say 1.0, but version minus 0.1 of India's startup ecosystem, right? Really proto. And around that time, I also started a podcast show using a camera, not like what we're doing right now, with entrepreneurs, and I would sort of interview an entrepreneur every week in South India, but really in Chennai, but really put together, bootstrapped. I think the show was called Business Bites. I think business might still be spelled wrong there on that show right now, right? But more about the content and keeping it going, like doing one a week, right? And after I built that, I said, hey, why not a show on startups on national television? And Young Turks existed, but Young Turks was about the entrepreneur, not about the startup. And a startup is a different beast, right? The startup separates itself from either via innovation or via execution, whereas an entrepreneur need not necessarily be innovative or need not necessarily execute. He can just have his own journey, right? And I made this presentation. I pitched it to multiple TV channels. I got thrown out of multiple channels. And finally, in a strange story, I was still sort of spent 3-4 months on this. It wasn't going anywhere. And I learned that a television show channel called ET Now was launching, and that they could be interested in something like this, right? And again, nothing really happened, but sort of a strange twist of luck that I was booking a flight ticket for a friend of mine, and as it turned out, a day before his flight, instead of his name on the ticket, my name was on the ticket, right? And I said, wow, man. I said, I never booked this ticket for me. And this was Chennai to Bombay. Back then, it was still something, right? And first thing I did was book his ticket because, otherwise he would have missed the flight and he was traveling to Spain. So then I realized, sitting on a Tuesday in the Sulekha.com office, that, hey, I have a flight tomorrow to Bombay, right? And I said, listen, I've really always wanted to go there. So I called my friend. He said, listen, why don't you just call this channel and tell them you're in town and see what happens? So that's what I did. I called up this guy. I said, hey, I'm in Bombay tomorrow. He said, oh, wow, come meet me. So then I took the flight, right? And I went to Bombay, right? And one thing led to another. And, 3 months later, I had the job. So
Wow. So essentially, that's the first learning, right? Always say yes.
Yeah. A piece of advice that, book more flights for your friends. Good things might happen.
That's true.
Make sure they pay you back. But the TV show was an amazing journey. I think 4 years, national television, really. And when Times Group does something, they do it really big. And we were on the ground floor. Arnab was on the first floor, as you know, right? And In those 4 years, I think there were 150 episodes, 400 companies, really in the heart of India's startup ecosystem. And, spending a lot of time with some of the best VCs, including, like the folks from Nexus or the folks from Shapalo or the folks from, and, you really learn a lot from these people, also amazing entrepreneurs, right? So, um, Naveen Tiwari announces $200 million fundraise on my show. Sachin Bansal did one of his large interviews on my show. I was lucky to interview Vinod Khosla, Vinod Dham, Steve Hewitson, and spent some time in the Valley. Kanwal Rekhi himself took me out and made me meet startups and so on and so forth there. So you feel really touched and blessed. And I think really that journalism and media gives you incredible access and learning, and quells your curiosity at a very short period. It doesn't pay you too well, but it gives you everything else, right? And around that time, in the last year, we did this TV show special called Super Angels, which was sort of Shark Tank has now become really popular, but this was like a product startup platform, right? And we had 15 companies shortlisted to the final 5, and the angels were the likes of Vijay Shekhar Sharma, Vishal Gondal, Sanjay Patsati or Karthik of Bloom, some of the best guys. Out of those 5 companies at the Bombay Stock Exchange, 3 raised funding, right? And to give you a sense of the strange dynamics of the media startup world, the sponsor of that show, I won't name who it was, but that guy committed $50,000, and 2 weeks before the show brought it down from $50 to $10,000, right? And at that point you can't do much, right? And the media, the irony was that the amount of money raised on that show was only $500,000. But today, Ashish, those same companies today, one is worth $400 million and one was sold for $100 million, which is Exotel and Unboxed, right?
Wow.
And it gives you a sense of when you curate startups, right? And you give them a platform, this is the opportunity that you have, right? Anyway, and I said I must come back and do something about this. Cut this to a year later, went to INSEAD, I was my MBA, spent some time as a strategy consultant, helped launch some TV channels both in Dubai and in Singapore, Indonesia. And then at one point in end of 2014, I was leading a project to relaunch a Chinese language channel in Singapore. And at that point, I thought consulting has no weight, because if I'm leading a Chinese language channel launch, right, then, seriously, consultants can do anything. And I said, it's high time I got out of the industry. And around that time, a classmate of mine from business school, we were toying around with an idea to launch a cinema event ticketing platform, right? And we ended up talking to BookMyShow, and BookMyShow said, hey, why don't we just do it together ourselves, right? So ended up launching BookMyShow in 2015 in Indonesia, and took on the CEO role within a year. And good journey. Indonesia is an amazing country, right? And we've scaled that for 3 years, scaled it to about $10 million. We were just about breaking even when BookMyShow raised another round of funding to become an international global play for live events, so on, live events and cinema ticketing, and raised another $100 million round from TPG. And then they shifted me to the Middle East to be the MENA CEO and lead this live event storing play, right? Moved in 2019 to BookMyShow Dubai, invested $3 million in the Coca-Cola arena, but within 1 year, we scaled the business to almost $8 million. So whatever we achieved in Indonesia in 3.5 years, we did in 1 year in the UAE, right? And I said, wow, man, this is amazing. This country, because of the high spending power and easier to do business, and a sort of very aggressive attitude, I said, you can do great things here in the Middle East. And then just when things were going great, we had a term sheet from another investor. COVID struck. And life is so fickle. We moved from 25 people to 7 people over a period of 5-6 months. And there was sort of boredom, which is the worst, is your worst enemy. There was nothing to do. We were tried with virtual events and various. You all remember that time, right? And around that time, I improved my expertise in unfortunately letting go of people. But more than that, by the time we reached September, October, November, Lenskart reached out and Piyush reached out and the SoftBank team reached out, right, to launch Lenskart in the Middle East region, and joined. And I've had the privilege of working with two amazing entrepreneurs in Ashish Hemrajani and Piyush Bansal, both quite different, but amazing to learn from. And in 2 years in Lenskart, scaled it to $4 million, 12 stores, 80 people, right? And built up everything from supply chain, branding, marketing, distribution, the entire retail team. So I moved from negotiating with the agent of Guns N' Roses to negotiating with ophthalmologists within 1 month, right? That strange mix. I was wondering where I landed up, right? But really, love the journey. In the last 2 months, we won the New Market Entrepreneur of the Year award by the Indian government. In the last 2 months, I felt, there's a huge opportunity from numerous other companies to launch in the region. And that's really where Startify came from, Ashish. And Startify, like you said, is a go-to-market platform for Series A, B companies. But that gives you a sense of what working.
Excellent. This has really been of course, a very good recap about, what, perseverance and, passion for a specific topic can do wonders. So great. So as we discussed, I'd like the format to be such that, the guest talks about top 3 do's and don'ts for a specific topic. And given your expertise and current passion, maybe what I would request you to talk is how to leverage the Middle East as a springboard for global presence, something like that topic. I'm sure that would be something very, very useful for the audience, like all the Series A or even startups who are looking to go global, right? And they can really understand from your, insights on how they can do that. So with that, over to you. Maybe let's start with the do's. In your view, what is the top do which anyone should do? Yeah.
Top 3 do's, right? I would say number 1, think global from the beginning in the Middle East, right? You need to position yourself as an international brand right from the start. And when I say international, it's also talking to the Arab audience and to the Indian audience and to the Western audience, and think like that from the beginning. Number 1. Number 2, don't price yourself too low in this market. It's a high pricing power market, high disposable income. Your cost plus pricing does not work, right? Keep your margins high, because there's lots of opportunity in the higher price segments, the luxury segments. And the thumb rule is that the price here is sort of 3x or 4x of India, right? Number 2. Number 3, in the Middle East, while UAE can be your initial ground, start building and thinking about Saudi Arabia from the beginning. That's the land of opportunity. And start thinking of other markets from the beginning. And be aggressive in terms of working with the government, working with large bodies, because guess what? If your incentives are aligned, they all want to work with you and they all want to grow with you.
Got it. And what would be your third do?
So the third do is, first do is in terms of globalization, right? Second do is in terms of pricing, right? And the third do is actually in growing internationally quickly, which is Saudi Arabia as the third do.
Okay. Yeah. Also, many companies, right, which are looking to target the African market, also have a presence or also have a head office in Dubai as well, right? That's what I've seen.
Absolutely. So and North Africa is really trending today. Morocco and Egypt and Tunisia and so on. So huge opportunity there as well. I would recommend that first 2-3 years get UAE and Saudi right, and then look at the next few months.
Okay. So that's a very good succinct top three do's. Now coming to the don'ts, what do you think are the things or the pitfalls which people should avoid or be cognizant of while entering this market? Yeah.
So I think first is not spending enough time on really creating a strong brand or a strong moat, right? And India, sometimes in more emerging economies, you have a jo dikta hai bikta hai approach, right? That doesn't happen over here, because this is really a Western economy. So you need to build that brand and build that presence, number 1, from a brand perspective. Number 2, similarly from a product perspective, right? I would say that spend 8 months finalizing your product, going deep. Why is your product internationally, globally the best, right? This market is not as because it's a formal professional market. and more old school. It's not as forgiving of prototypes and of MVPs as other markets, right? That's number two. So don't launch without a full product. Number two, right? Number three is while bootstrapping, you might bootstrap, but don't ignore the local nuance of the local country, which means, how are you appealing to the Arabs? How are you appealing to the West? Does your team have Arab expats, right? Are you embracing an Arab first thought process, right? Does that show in your partnerships? These are the things to think about.
All right, that's very relevant. On the Arab language perspective, which you mentioned, so I'm sure there would be enough adequate teams or capabilities which are there, which can help, for example, for localization of your website or localization of your app for Arab language, right? So that is something which you should, find the right partners early on in the product journey and do that. So yeah, I think overall, thanks, Sudhir. I think that really gives a great perspective, and I'm sure the audience would find it very useful. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Presentation and will be there in the show call notes, along with any other bonus content that you should definitely check. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.